What if I told you that perfectionism isn't about high standards, but about fear? Not fear of failure, but fear of your own strength. Fear of what could happen if you actually unleashed the full force of your potential. Think about it. How many times have you delayed starting a project, rewritten the same sentence a dozen times, or polished an idea endlessly before showing it to the world? You tell yourself it's because you want it perfect. But deep down, is it possible that you're not protecting the work? You're protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself from the weight of success, from criticism, from the responsibility that comes when you stop hiding and finally step into your power. Perfectionism feels noble. It sounds like a commitment to excellence, a refusal to settle for less. But in reality, it often becomes a prison of hesitation. You wait for the perfect time, the flawless plan, the unshakable confidence, and while you wait, your power sleeps. You silence your own voice, not because it isn't ready, but because you're afraid of how loud it might sound once you release it. You're afraid of the attention, the resistance, even the influence you might command. Have you ever noticed how perfectionism keeps you busy, but rarely moves you forward? It disguises itself as progress, but it's really paralysis. Machiavelli, the ruthless observer of human nature, understood this fear well. He saw that most people avoid power, not because they can't handle it, but because power demands exposure. It demands courage. It demands that you act without every guarantee in place, and that's exactly what perfectionists avoid. They'd rather polish the surface than take the risk of stepping into the arena. Ask yourself honestly, are you striving for perfection, or are you secretly terrified of conflict, criticism, and the consequences of being truly seen? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. We're going to break apart this illusion of perfectionism and reveal it for what it really is, fear in disguise. And more importantly, we're going to explore how Machiavelli's timeless lessons can shatter this fear and teach you how to embrace action, imperfection, and courage as the real path to power. You've probably felt this tug-of-war inside yourself, the desire to create, to act, to lead, fighting against the endless cycle of hesitation. You've told yourself, I'm just a perfectionist. But what if that label is the mask you use to hide from your own strength? What if the greatest barrier between you and the life you want is not failure, but the fear of success? You've experienced it before, haven't you? That moment when the closer you get to a breakthrough, the more resistance you feel. That's not perfectionism. That's fear whispering that your power might be too much. And here's where the shift begins. Because once you understand this truth, you can no longer play small under the excuse of perfection. You'll begin to see perfectionism for what it is, a shield protecting your insecurities, not a weapon sharpening your potential. The question is, will you keep hiding behind it, or will you finally confront the fear that has been holding you back? Let's dive into Machiavelli's lessons, because within them lies a roadmap to break free from this illusion and reclaim the power you've been afraid to touch. And as you reflect on this, I want to ask you something important. Have you ever felt trapped in that cycle of polishing, delaying, or waiting for the perfect moment, only to realize later that the real obstacle was fear? If this resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about a moment when perfectionism stopped you, or when you noticed that fear of your own power held you back. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to break free from their own chains. And if this message is striking a chord with you, take a second to like this video. It may seem like a small action, but it makes a huge difference. Each like tells the algorithm and tells me that this kind of content matters, that it's worth pushing forward so more people can discover it. Most importantly, if you want to keep walking this path of deep psychology, philosophy, and timeless wisdom with me, subscribe to the channel. That simple decision is how we grow together, how this community expands, and how we make sure you don't miss the insights that could shift the way you see yourself and the world. The truth is, your participation is what keeps this conversation alive. Without you, it's just words. With you, it becomes a movement. So let your voice be heard, show your support, and join in, because we are just getting started. What comes next will take these ideas even deeper, and you won't want to miss it. Perfectionism has a way of dressing itself up as something admirable. It looks like discipline, commitment, even excellence. People say, I just have high standards, as if that alone explains the endless delays, the sleepless nights rewriting the same idea, or the projects that never see the light of day. But if you look closer, you find a hidden truth. Perfectionism is not always about aiming higher. Most of the time, it's about avoiding what terrifies you the most. It's about protecting yourself from the weight of exposure, from the impact of stepping forward and letting the world see what you are truly capable of. Think about it. When you tell yourself something isn't ready yet, is that really the case, or is it fear whispering in the background? Fear that once you release your work, your words, your decisions into the open, they will no longer belong only to you. They will be judged, challenged, and maybe even praised. And praise is not always easy to handle either, because it brings responsibility. Suddenly, your potential is no longer hypothetical. It becomes real, and real power always demands more of you. That is why perfectionism so often keeps people in the shadows. It delays the transformation that begins the moment you dare to act. This illusion is seductive because it feels safe. You convince yourself that waiting a little longer, refining a little more, is progress. But in truth, it is hesitation disguised as hard work. Behind every "not yet" hides the fear of crossing a line where there is no turning back. Once you reveal yourself, you can't hide behind excuses anymore. You can't claim you're still preparing. You have to face the consequences of being visible. That is the part most people secretly fear. Not failure, but the responsibility of their own strength. Perfectionism becomes a comfortable mask, a persona that tells the world, "I care too much to rush." Yet behind the mask is the reality that you are holding back, protecting yourself from the very journey that could redefine you. And the longer you cling to that mask, the more it drains your courage, the more it convinces you that hiding is safer than revealing. That hesitation is wiser than risk. But history and your own life shows otherwise. Every great transformation begins not with flawless preparation, but with imperfect action. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because once you see how perfectionism hides the truth of your fear, you can begin to understand the cost of staying trapped in it. And when you recognize the cost, you also discover the possibility of breaking free. Write this down in your mind. Perfectionism is not strength, it's avoidance. And avoidance has a price. If this makes sense to you, drop a comment below and write, "This is my truth." When we bring Machiavelli into this conversation, the entire picture of perfectionism and fear becomes even clearer. Machiavelli was not a dreamer. He was a strategist who looked at human nature without illusions, without comforting lies. He stripped away the noble stories people tell themselves and exposed the raw mechanics of power, control, and survival. One of his most famous principles was that fear is often more powerful than love. At first, this sounds cold, even brutal, but think about it. How often do people act not out of love or inspiration, but out of fear? Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of humiliation. These fears move people faster than hope ever could, and that truth doesn't just apply to rulers or leaders. It applies to the way each of us governs ourselves. Inside your own mind, there is a constant negotiation between power and a resistance between the bold voice that says, "Step forward," and the fearful voice that says, "Stay hidden." Perfectionism is the fearful voice dressed in noble clothes. It tells you that you're being careful, responsible, even wise, but in reality it is fear keeping you under control. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately, because he knew that power is never neutral. It is either seized and directed, or it is suppressed and wasted. Imagine how many opportunities in your life have been lost because fear had the louder voice. A decision you didn't make, a risk you didn't take, a truth you didn't speak. You may have thought you were waiting for the right moment, but Machiavelli would argue that you were allowing fear to rule you. And when fear rules, power sleeps. The kingdom of your own potential remains unclaimed because its rightful ruler hesitates to take the throne. Now here's the uncomfortable revelation. If fear is often stronger than love in politics, it is just as strong within you. You may admire your dreams, you may even love your vision of the future, but fear can still dominate your daily actions. It convinces you to polish endlessly, to delay indefinitely, to stay safe in the shadows rather than risk stepping into the light. And just like subjects under a ruler, your inner world obeys the strongest command. If fear rules, then hesitation becomes law. But Machiavelli also taught that fear can be redirected. A leader uses fear strategically, not as a prison but as a weapon. And the same is true for you. When you stop fearing your own power and begin fearing the cost of hiding it, the balance shifts. Suddenly, inaction feels more dangerous than exposure. This is the exact mental transformation that can break the chains of perfectionism. Now, I want to go even deeper into this perspective because once you start to see yourself through Machiavelli's lens, you'll realize that fear is not the enemy. It is the test. And how you choose to respond to it will determine whether you stay confined or finally claim your place of power. Fear has a clever way of convincing us that it is our protector. It whispers that by waiting, by polishing, by preparing endlessly, we are keeping ourselves safe. And in a way, that is true. Fear does protect you. But ask yourself, what exactly is it protecting? It does not guard your strength. It guards your weakness. It keeps you sheltered from judgment, from criticism, from conflict. Yet in doing so, it also buries the very power you are meant to express. Perfectionism is that shield. It looks polished, respectable, even admirable, but its real purpose is to keep you from stepping into the arena where your strength would finally be tested. Machiavelli would not hesitate to call this out. He understood that exposing strength, even imperfect, even raw, is far more valuable than hiding behind illusions of flawlessness. To him, hesitation is vulnerability, and vulnerability attracts exploitation. A leader who hides too much is seen as weak, and weakness invites challenge. In your own life, the same principle applies. When you cling to perfectionism, you are signaling to the world that you are afraid to be seen as you are. And paradoxically, that fear draws exactly the kind of judgment you were trying to avoid. Think about it. People rarely admire the one who never risks anything. They admire the one who dares, even if mistakes happen along the way. Your endless revisions and careful silence may feel safe, but they communicate hesitation, and hesitation does not inspire respect. Courage does. Action does. Even failure faced openly commands more respect than endless avoidance. When you refine forever, you lock your ideas away in a cage. You think you are protecting them from attack, but in truth, you are denying them the chance to breathe, to grow, to influence others. A shield that never lowers eventually becomes a prison. Machiavelli would argue that power is not strengthened by hiding. It is strengthened by exposure, by resistance, by challenge. Just as steel is hardened in fire, your strength is sharpened only when you dare to bring it into the open. This is why fear, when it disguises itself as perfectionism, is so dangerous. It convinces you that it is preserving your power when in fact it is suffocating it. The longer you cling to the illusion, the heavier the shield becomes, until it crushes the very person it was meant to protect. And here lies the truth most people don't want to face. If you want to command respect, you must be willing to be seen even in imperfection, because it is better to reveal strength and endure conflict than to hide forever in the comfort of weakness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because once you recognize that perfectionism protects only weakness, you begin to understand that true power demands exposure, not concealment. And with that understanding comes a choice, whether to keep hiding or to step forward and let the world see your strength. Machiavelli's sharpest lesson for us is that appearances may seduce, but results rule. In his world, princes who looked strong but failed to act decisively quickly lost their grip on power. The image might dazzle for a moment, but if the substance behind it is hollow, the illusion collapses. Now think about perfectionism in this light. It is an obsession with appearances, the perfect draft, the perfect presentation, the perfect image others will see. But while you polish the surface, life is moving, opportunities are passing, and others are taking bold action that shapes reality. You might look prepared, but if you never act, that appearance means nothing. Perfectionists often believe that by making things flawless, they will earn admiration. Yet the truth is, admiration comes not from how carefully something is presented, but from the impact it makes once it is alive in the world. Machiavelli would remind us that people respect outcomes, not intentions. No one remembers the endless hours you spent refining an idea that never left your desk. They remember the bold moves that actually shifted something, even if those moves were messy. Action, even imperfect, commands respect in a way that appearance never can. This is why perfectionism can be so deceptive. It feels productive. You feel like you are working, improving, refining. But in reality, you are preparing for a stage you never step onto. You hold the mask in front of your face, terrified that if you drop it, the world will judge. But Machiavelli would say, better to act with flaws than to never act at all. Because power is not about how flawless you look. It is about the force you project into the world through decisive steps. And here's the paradox. Bold, imperfect action often creates stronger appearances than endless polishing ever could. A leader who moves quickly, who dares, who makes decisions even under risk, appears powerful precisely because they act. The courage to take action creates an aura that no amount of cosmetic perfection can fake. People instinctively respect momentum. They may criticize the details, but deep down, they recognize the strength it takes to move forward when others hesitate. So ask yourself, how many times have you sacrificed action for appearance? How many doors have remained closed because you were too busy shining the key instead of turning it? Every moment spent obsessing over perfection is a moment not spent creating real impact. And the cruel irony is that in the end, no one sees the endless preparation. They only see whether you acted or not. Now I want to go even deeper into this truth, because once you understand that power belongs to those who move, not those who polish, you begin to realize that the obsession with appearance is not only a trap, it is a betrayal of your own potential. And breaking free from it may be the first true act of power you ever take. Carl Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to face the world, the carefully crafted version of ourselves that allows us to function in society. It is not inherently bad. In fact, it serves a purpose. We all need a mask to navigate relationships, careers, and communities. But here is where perfectionism becomes dangerous. Instead of using the mask as a tool, perfectionists devote their lives to polishing it, reshaping it, and presenting it as if the mask itself were their essence. They mistake the surface for the substance, and, while the mask shines brilliantly, their true power remains hidden in the shadows, untouched and unused. Machiavelli, though writing centuries before Jung, would have recognized this immediately. He was a master of appearances, but he never confused appearances with reality. He advised rulers to wear masks strategically, to project strength, to inspire fear or loyalty. But he also warned against believing in the mask too deeply. For Machiavelli, appearances are weapons, not identities. If you confuse the weapon with the warrior, you become weak. And that is exactly what happens when perfectionism takes over. You become obsessed with how you are seen, rather than with what you actually are capable of doing. Perfectionists polish their persona endlessly, believing that if the mask is flawless, the world will accept them. But in truth, the more time spent perfecting the mask, the further they drift from their authentic strength. The mask becomes a prison, and eventually, even they forget what lies beneath it. Jung believed that true growth required confronting the hidden parts of the self, not just decorating the surface. And Machiavelli would have added that real power is earned not by pretending to be strong, but by acting with strength, even when the mask cracks. Think of the leaders, creators, or thinkers who left the greatest mark on history. Were they flawless? Hardly. Their masks often slipped. They were criticized, misunderstood, even hated. Yet because they dared to act, their essence was revealed and their impact endured. Perfectionists, by contrast, may never reach that point because they are too busy polishing the mask that no one will remember. The lesson here is not to throw away the persona entirely. It has value, but you must know it for what it is. The mask should serve you, not control you. It should open doors, not keep you locked behind them. Machiavelli would urge you to use the persona strategically, but never confuse it with your true identity. Because once you mistake the appearance for the essence, you sacrifice the very power that could have transformed your life. Now I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because once you see the difference between the mask and the self, you begin to understand why hiding behind perfection is not protection at all. It is self-betrayal. And escaping that trap is the only way to let your real strength emerge. Perfectionism thrives on avoidance. At its core, it is an attempt to sidestep the discomfort of conflict. Conflict with others, conflict with expectations, even conflict within yourself. You wait to release your work because you fear criticism. You hesitate to speak because you fear rejection. You polish endlessly because you imagine that if you can just make things flawless, no one will challenge you. But here's the truth. Conflict is not something you can escape. It is woven into the very fabric of human existence. Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone. He saw that history is not shaped by those who avoid conflict, but by those who enter it willingly, prepared to take the blows and deliver their own. Think about it. Every bold decision, every breakthrough, every act that changes the world invites conflict. When you act, someone will disagree. When you create, someone will criticize. When you rise, someone will try to pull you down. That is the cost of visibility, and yet it is also the price of power. Machiavelli would argue that trying to avoid conflict is not wisdom. It is weakness disguised as caution. The ruler who hesitates to confront opposition loses authority, and the individual who avoids criticism loses momentum. Perfectionists cling to the illusion that if they just refine things long enough, they can slip past conflict unnoticed. But in truth, the more you try to avoid conflict, the more fragile you become. Like a glass mask, the moment reality strikes, you shatter. By contrast, those who embrace conflict are strengthened by it. They learn, they adapt, they harden like steel in fire. Conflict does not diminish them. It reveals their resilience. Machiavelli saw conflict not as a threat, but as the proving ground of power. Leaders who faced criticism head-on, who endured betrayal, who stood firm against opposition, were the ones who carved their names into history. The same is true for you. If you avoid conflict, you avoid growth. If you delay action to escape rejection, you delay the very transformation that could redefine your life. The perfectionist shield may feel protective, but it also locks you out of the arena where strength is earned. This is why embracing conflict is essential. Not because conflict is pleasant, but because it is inevitable. And once you stop fearing it, you strip perfectionism of its strongest weapon. Criticism no longer paralyzes you. Rejection no longer defines you. Conflict becomes not something to dread, but something to endure, to use, to grow from. And that shift changes everything. Now I want to go even deeper into this truth because once you stop fearing conflict, you realize that the very struggles you've been avoiding are the same forces that can shape you into someone unshakable. And that is where real power begins. Power is not something that thrives in silence or secrecy. It demands exposure because only in the open can it influence, command, and expand. Just as a prince in Machiavelli's time could not rule from behind closed doors, you cannot expect your potential to grow if it never leaves the safety of your private thoughts. A ruler gains authority by showing strength, even when risk is involved. Likewise, you gain influence only when you reveal your ideas, your skills, your creations, imperfect though they may be, to the world that needs to see them. Perfectionism convinces you that keeping your work hidden is wise, that waiting until everything is flawless will somehow guarantee acceptance. But this is a lie. No one respects a silent voice. No one follows an invisible leader, and no one is moved by an idea that never reaches them. Power is forged in exposure, in the courage to stand where others can see you, judge you, and respond to you. Without that step, your potential remains nothing more than a possibility, and possibilities alone do not shape reality. Think of every figure who altered the course of history or left a mark on the world. None of them were perfect. Their writings had flaws. Their actions drew criticism. Their choices sparked conflict. But because they exposed themselves, because they dared to step forward despite imperfection, they gained the ability to influence others. The power they held was not in their perfection, but in their willingness to be seen. Perfectionists, by contrast, fade into obscurity. Their polished but hidden work dies quietly with them, never given the chance to create impact. Exposure is not without cost. When you reveal your strength, you also reveal your vulnerability. When you put your work into the world, you invite judgment. But this is exactly what Machiavelli would call necessary risk. Without exposure, respect cannot be commanded. Without visibility, power has no stage to grow upon. And the irony is that the very act of exposure, though terrifying, is what strengthens you. Each time you step into the light, you build resilience. Each time you allow your imperfection to be seen, you learn that criticism does not destroy you, it sharpens you. This is why perfectionism is so deceptive. It whispers that waiting keeps you safe, but in reality it robs you of the only thing that makes power real: presence. The world cannot respond to what it cannot see, and until you take that bold step of exposure, your potential remains only a dream locked inside. Now I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because once you accept that power grows only when revealed, you begin to see that hiding is not safety. It is surrender. And when you stop surrendering, You finally begin to claim the influence that was always waiting for you. Perfectionism feeds on the desire for control. It tells you that if you can just manage every detail, anticipate every outcome, and eliminate every flaw, then you will finally feel secure. But this is an illusion. Control, at least in the absolute sense perfectionists chase, does not exist. Life is unpredictable, people are unpredictable, and power itself is unpredictable. Machiavelli saw this clearly. The world is governed not by perfect order, but by chaos, chance, and human ambition. To demand perfect control before you act is to guarantee that you never act at all. You wait for a certainty that will never come, and while you wait, opportunities vanish. This obsession with control is what makes perfectionism so paralyzing. Every plan must be airtight, every word rehearsed, every possibility accounted for. And because that level of certainty is impossible, the perfectionist ends up frozen, trapped in a loop of endless preparation. The harsh truth is that no one controls the battlefield completely. Not a prince, not a leader, not even you in your own life. What separates those who rise from those who remain stuck is not control, but the ability to move forward despite the unknown. This is where courage enters. For Machiavelli, courage was far more valuable than caution. A leader who hesitated, waiting for certainty, quickly lost power to bolder rivals. The same is true for you. Courage is the antidote to perfectionism because it refuses to wait for perfect conditions. It accepts the risk of imperfection, the inevitability of criticism, and still chooses to act. While control is an illusion, courage is a choice, and it is a choice available to you at every moment. Courage does not mean recklessness. It does not mean acting without thought. Machiavelli valued strategy, but he also knew that strategy without execution is worthless. Courage is the force that pushes strategy into reality. It is the willingness to face outcomes you cannot fully control, trusting that your strength will be enough to adapt, endure, and even thrive. And this is precisely what perfectionists lack. They cling to the fantasy of control instead of embracing the power of courage. Ask yourself, how many times have you held back because you weren't certain of the result? How many moments passed where courage could have carried you forward, but the illusion of control held you prisoner? If you look honestly, you will see that the times you acted with courage, even imperfectly, brought more transformation and impact than all the hours spent polishing and waiting. Now I want to go even deeper into this contrast, because once you understand that control is an illusion while courage is a choice, you begin to realize that every step forward requires daring. And it is in daring, not in controlling, that true power is born. Perfectionism has a way of convincing you that it is your ally. It whispers that you are being responsible, careful, noble even, when in reality it is the very thing holding you back. It is not your strength, it is your prison. Every delay, every revision, every excuse to wait just a little longer is another chain you wrap around yourself. And the more you cling to it, the heavier those chains become, until they bury your potential beneath the weight of hesitation. Machiavelli's brutal honesty cuts through this illusion. He understood that the world is not moved by intentions or by appearances, but by action. It is the willingness to act boldly, to face conflict, to embrace imperfection that forges real power. History does not remember those who polished endlessly in the dark. It remembers those who dared to step into the light, flaws and all, and leave an impact that could not be ignored. This is the truth perfectionism hides from you, that your fear of being imperfect is really your fear of being powerful, because once you step forward, once you let yourself be seen, there is no turning back. You can no longer hide behind preparation. You must own the strength that is revealed, and with that strength comes responsibility. That is what frightens you most, not failure, but the weight of success. But courage is always stronger than fear if you allow it to be. Every time you choose to act despite uncertainty, you weaken perfectionism's grip. Every time you reveal your work, your voice, your ideas, you prove that imperfection is not the enemy. It is the path to growth. Power is not born in safety. Power is born in risk, in conflict, in the fire of exposure. And the choice to step into that fire is the moment you begin to transform. So the question is not whether you are capable. Deep down, you already know you are. The real question is, will you dare to step into your power? Will you stop hiding behind the illusion of perfection and embrace the courage that could change everything? If this message resonates with you, share your truth in the comments. Do you recognize perfectionism as fear in your own life? And if you are ready to break free, type one word below: power. If you've stayed with me all the way to this point, it tells me something. You're not just listening, you're searching. And that's exactly why I make these videos. So if you want to keep walking this path with me, hit subscribe and let's keep building this space together. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss the next insight that might be the one you've been waiting for. And since you made it to the end, I'd love to know who's really here with me. Drop a comment and write, "I'm with you until the end." It's a simple way for me to see the ones who are truly committed to this journey, and your words might encourage someone else reading to take their first step forward too. If this message spoke to you, give the video a like. It helps more than you realize, and it's a quiet way of saying, yes, this matters. And don't stop here. There's a video right next to this one that continues and deepens the ideas we've explored today. Click it and keep going with me, because the conversation doesn't end here. It only gets stronger.